HiSec Buyback offers a 90% JITA anywhere in HiSec. Simply go to hisec.evebuyback.com, appraise your items, create a contract, and get paid quickly.
This is Talking in Stations, a show about EVE Online, the slightly sick Artemis edition. Fortunately, I am joined by my co-host Grigoran Musu. How are you feeling today, Grigoran?
I'm doing all right. I just had another semester of class start today, and I've been doing some interesting projects at my job.
Awesome, sounds fun. I have been, spending a lot of time reading articles and browsing killboards, some of which our chat has already experienced. We're once again just going to give a summary of what we've discussed already for about an hour, even an hour and a half on the show today. So thank you to all who are still sticking with us. Let's go ahead and jump right into things. Top story on today's docket, if I can swap over to showing you my browser. We have the the alliance known as Elysians. It's been confirmed that they are disbanding. You may recall the name Elysians. There was a story we covered over multiple weeks and or months with this group. They are the remnants of an alliance formerly known as NSH, Null Sechnaya Shilopen.
Yeah.
And that group, their former leader had left and joined Snuffed Out with his corporation, but had some spies still, or some characters with sufficient roles still in NSH, and was able to cause quite a bit of havoc, transfer a Keepstar, destroy quite a few assets. So it was a big old mess.
He transferred their staging Keepstar and locked them out of all their stuff they had in it, as well as kicking all of the corporations from the alliance. But then those corporations decided to stay together under a new name, and I believe Yabi, the CEO of Reba, led the alliance.
Right on. Well, unfortunately, it sounds like that they weren't able to get the band back together. In this particular case, they are disbanding with a few notable movements. We don't have destinations for all of their corporations yet. The few that we do, and are probably worth mentioning, we have Iron Guard joining Fraternity, which isn't surprising, or it wouldn't surprise me personally if more of these groups end up joining Fraternity, because there has been such a long-standing relationship between NSH, Elysians, and Fraternity themselves. So I wouldn't be surprised to see more groups go that way. Iron Guard's the first, and you may also recognize them because they are the previous members of, what was that alliance called?
Iron Armada.
Yeah, and they've got two notable players who immediately jump to my mind, that being Jurius Doctor and Trigit. What jumps to your mind?
Yeah, I know Jurius because I have a background with Eve Uni, and he is also associated with them. He had left for Iron Guard by the time that I had joined, and then they moved to Goon Swarm a few months after I started playing, where they stayed for about half a year. Early in 2020, I had been hearing rumors that a corporation was looking at leaving Goon Swarm to move up to what was at the time TIS was calling it the Veil of the Violent.
Oh, that was a great name.
I was guessing that it would be Iron Guard, but it turned out to be the terrifying League of Dogfort, which it did end up joining NSH with Iron Guard after the alliance that they founded disbanded. But Iron Guard, what happened? I started seeing. I was in Horde at the time, and I started seeing that suddenly we had another set of blues out in cash. That was the newly reformed NSH. NSH is an alliance which has come and gone over the years. I guess kind of like Triumvirate or Black Legion, but kind of like that, how those alliances have come and gone over the years.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Fair enough. I think that's a very good comparison. I wouldn't... Yeah, no, that's just straight up a good comparison. It's sad to see them go, with NSH basically being under the control of somebody who doesn't want it to exist anymore. They're in snuff now. And now Elysians, the restart, is disbanding. I'm pretty sure the chapter is closed in terms of what impact they're going to have on EVE Online. But they do still have quite a few storied corporations. Iron Guard's one of them. They're going to Fraternity. Original Sinners, another notable one. You may recall us telling their story when they left NC Dot during the Vietnam War. There was a lot of drama, and they joined NSH. And now we have reports that they are going to join Pandemic Legion. So that's good. Might cause some drama. It might not. We'll have to see.
I'm
the
glad
reason
I don't have to deal with the politics of that.
Yeah, the reason it could be interesting is that Pandemic Legion have long been close allies of Northern Coalition. Northern Coalition are not at all happy with Original Sinners, so the question then becomes, do we have another AOM joining the Imperium situation? I doubt it. I wouldn't be surprised if they're just some angry words, some people salty with each other, some smack talk, and then everybody just shoots spaceships, as they typically do.
That is all above my pay grade, and I'm glad I don't have to deal with it.
Fair enough. It should be also interesting to see where everybody else goes. Terrifying League of Dogfort, you mentioned them. We'll have to see where they land.
It's interesting to note that the three largest corporations of Elysians are all former Imperium. Like Dogfort and Iron Guard were in Goon Swarm until early 2020. Original Sinners was, I think, it had spent some time in both TNT and the Bastion, and their main fleet commander for a while now has been Pittsburgh 2989, I guess for around a year and a half, who was a long-time Goon Swarm fleet commander until he was kicked over some drama in November 2019.
You know, I was talking a bit before the show about the way to characterize the motivations behind all of the recent movements we've had in the EVE Online political sphere, with AOM and Ranger Regiment and Evictus and Invictus and all of these different groups who have been going through a lot of internal turmoil, not to mention the spaceship violence that has been happening. And I was trying to decide, is it just drama related? Is it politics related? Is it mechanics related? Or are they fighting over space? Do people need room for their pilots to do things? Previously, I didn't have a solid answer. The more I think about it, though, the more I'm just like, man, EVE players are giant drama llamas.
There are a lot of old grudges. Yeah, 2 years ago, Dogfort was Goon Swarm's main U.S. time zone FC corporation.
Right on.
So they went off to start their own alliance. First, like I said earlier, was in what we called the Veil of the Violent. But then after that period ended, they moved down south to join Wrecking Crew for a while. But then when they disbanded, some of them stayed in RC, some of their members individually rejoined Goon Swarm, and a couple of them moved back up north to join NSH or other North alliances.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where they move this time. I do want to just refocus a little bit on the groups that we talked about where we already know where they're going. We already talked about Iron Guard, who's joined Fraternity. I would expect a number of corporations from Elysians go that way as well. We know that Original Sinners are joining Pandemic Legion, but I wanted to use that as a jumping off point onto this battle report, because we had Fraternity and Elysians together, as I would expect, and they were fighting really the who's who of scrappy, combat-oriented alliances who like to punch above their weight. is a good way that I would characterize them. So we've got Snuffed Out, Rote Capel, Deepwater Hooligans, Laserhawks, Of Sound Mind, CapF, Capital Fusion, the corporation. Where are they going again?
They're with Snuffed Out. They have not in-game joined the Alliance yet, but they're with Snuffed Out.
Right on. And Brotherhood of Spacers, who were recently in the news because Marshy joined them. Free Range Chickens, glad to see them still active again. Yeah. Just a very eclectic group, all happening upon the same Rorqual, jumping into a system, Etaco, up in Tribute. It was tackled and killed. Some carriers were dropped to save it. Dreads were dropped to kill the carriers. Counter Dreads were dropped and died. The Dreads did evac safely, but they left behind a group of Rote Capel Lokis. And there were a few things I found interesting about this battle report. One was just all of the groups. It's lovely to see just all of these different thriving, very PvP-focused organizations having fun doing their gameplay and causing destruction, with capitals no less. So even though the price of caps is absolutely insane, these dread bombs are still happening, which is great to see. But then also look at these doctrines. Like, we've got Ham Lokis with Logi Lokis. We've got Beam Legions. We've got Artie Slipneers from Laserhawks, a third-party doctrine. We've got Jam Goose from Rote Capel to go in with their Lokis. And then just Dreads and some Minnows. Like, this is a phenomenal set of doctrines to have on the field in what many would consider to be hacks online. Oh, and then, of course, a Drake fleet. But I'm not sure if they were actually here for the fight. Can
I bring my Drake?
Yeah. So anyway, that was fun. It brought a smile to my face to see all of those different doctrines fielded at once and coming together to blow up some capital ships. So I thought I should share that joy with you, dear viewer.
Yeah, Laserhawks has been flying Sleipnirs as one of their main doctrines that they have for a couple of years. I think they and Hard Knocks are the only people who really still use that.
I would agree. It was made popular originally by HK, I want to say, back when they were whaling. Very classic doctrine for whaling as a hobby. There's a question in chat from Space Gator. Wonder if the Lokis were fit with nullification or cloak. Looks like they were cloaky, non-nullified. Do they have nullification in the cargo? No. So they were cloaky, non-nullified Lokis.
Yeah, if I was going to pick a cloaky Loki fit, I would have the nullification as a cargo refit and not and try to avoid being nullified when I entered the fight, because you lose a high slot and you have some targeting drawbacks. Yep. Which I think some of the drawbacks are mitigated by the subsystem, but that's still a high slot that you're not using for something else that you could be using it for.
Indeed. Also worth noting, these are Ham Lokis with 10 MN afterburners. So they are very much a whaling doctrine in the sense of you catch a big target, you sit on its face pumping in DPS, and your small SIG with the afterburner plus your high resists, you're hoping to avoid lots of fighter damage if caps or supers get dropped on you. But if things like if things like hacks show up with very long range projection, you're probably in a world of hurt. And that is in fact what happened in this particular case after the hacks could properly engage them once Snuff had left the field, as I understand it. Alright, so there's that story. And other battle report news, let's talk about a Keepstar that died. It belonged to DJ's retirement fund, corporation within the Goonswarm Federation, but it was not theirs.
The main holding corp of Goonswarm that all their Keepstars are in. A lot of big alliances that own Keepstars in particular often have multiple holding corporations, so people with roles in one might not be trusted to have access to the Keepstars. And even for alliances the size of Goonswarm or Pandemic Horde, it's often only one person who is trusted to have a character in the Keepstar Holding Corp.
As long as you're not trusting the judge, it's probably a good idea. In this particular case, it was allowed to die intentionally. You can see other members of the Imperium, the Initiative, as well as just about everybody in the universe were here shooting this Keepstar because it was in Esoteria, the former home of the Army of Mangoes. It was sold to the Imperium as part of the move from AOM into Ranger Regiment. Drama occurred, Ranger Regiment disbands and is kicked from the Imperium. And so as a result, this thing was allowed to die, and a whole load of loot dropped. Some of it was scooped, a lot of it was killed. There was mayhem to be had. It was quite the spectacle as I understand it, but if you're confused at all by the kill mail, that is what occurred. That's the story behind it. Probably aren't going to see many more like it. There are a lot of structures, there were a lot of structures to be killed in the Esoteria region, but they have been dying at quite the pace. So I'm not sure how many are left to kill.
Yeah, with the structure abandonment that was added to the game a year and a few months ago, people have started to realize that it is now an extremely bad idea to transfer your staging structures for major fortizars and Keepstars ever, and it's better to either unanchor them or just allow them to die. And what happened here is an example of why people consider it a bad idea.
Yeah, and the specific mechanics that Gregorian is talking about there, in nullsec space, and in any space other than wormholes, maybe Pochven? No, I think Pochven has asset safety. There's a mechanic called asset safety. It doesn't? Awesome. Pochven is higher on my list of favorite places now. An asset safety allows you to basically say, hey, my stuff in the structure, it's not safe in that structure anymore. I'm willing to pay a 15% fee, wait a while, and it will show up in an NPC station. There are select stations in and around the map where these tend to go to, especially if we're talking nullsec asset safety. The way to get around this, though, is if a structure remains unfueled and in low power state for, I think, a week is the cutoff, it becomes abandoned, and then the asset safety doesn't kick in. So under normal circumstances, a citadel dies, everything gets asset safetied. If the structure went abandoned first, everything drops, which is very bad for the former members who used to be a part of it. But yeah, it looks like a lot of structures are already dead over in Esoteria, most of them belonging to AOM or their former owners, so they wouldn't have been similar let's let this stuff go abandoned and scoop the loot situations. This was very much a unique one. Do not transfer staging Keepstar. Yeah, this was a big deal. You might recall a story at the end of Vietnam when Brave Collective transferred their Keepstar in their home region, I think it was in Catch, over to Goonswarm. And plenty of people were calling this out as just an absolutely terrible thing because it was going to be allowed to go abandoned. And then all of the people who had joined Brave over the years, or even Legacy Coalition or Pappy Coalition pilots who staged there but had gone AFK, would lose all their things. But it was an explicit part of the deal that was made that those structures, or that structure, would not be killed or allowed to go abandoned and then killed. And given the Imperium and their staunch insistence on upholding their deals, so far at least, it's been upheld. So that was a bit of a tangent off of an interesting kill mail that kudos to the people who were able to join in on the fun. Some other things in and around New Eden, the event Interstellar Convergence is still ongoing. I'm hearing lots of folks having fun with it. I had interesting conversations with different people over time about what it is and who should run it and why. And it seems that this is one of the first events where it is very much the kind of people who wanted a spaceship raid boss type experience are getting that. And they're really enjoying like the progression aspects and the difficult PvE and that sort of mechanics driven stuff. But if you're just out there trying to make the most ISK per hour, unless you got in really, really early, which a lot of people did and made a lot of money, then it isn't quite there for you yet. You can make some ISK, but if you are already an endgame player and so you have an established method of making ISK, it's probably going to be better than hopping on the event now that it's been going on and prices have stabilized. So that's where we are with that. It is certainly an experience so far. The event was custom designed for Ash Tarathi. Oh, that's funny. It's not about money, this event. Yeah, certainly so. Certainly so. And I'm a fan of it. Thinking about all of the other different MMOs, Elder Scrolls Online, Final Fantasy, New World, like they all have this sort of raid and grouping together to go and conquer dungeons type content that Eve just has never had. And seeing it come to EVE Online for the first time in a non-broken way is phenomenal. Have you participated in the events, Gregorn? Is that gameplay your thing, or are you not your thing?
Yeah, there are a couple of other people in my corporations who do more events more than me, but like one even before I was in this corporation, like I remember the 2020 Christmas event. Every time I took those filaments, I would always see Elise Randolph in local, and he's now in my corporation, and I think he still loves the events. But I try to get a taste of every event. I haven't gotten as much of this one as I have the Christmas or Halloween one yet, though.
Fair enough.
Like I'm not a big Doctor Who fan, so I was less interested in this one.
It's funny you mention Elise in the events. I recently interviewed him. Alec did most of the interviewing. I was there to assist over on the Declarations of War podcast. And pre-recording, he was talking about how he was still grinding through the sites, trying to get one of the jackets. I think he was after the Dapper jacket for his character in game. So he is certainly grinding it out. If you want to go and try and capture or kill him, he is in space and flying, probably on the Elise Randolph character or one of his bajillion alts. Who knows? Let's talk about that interview real quick. I'm not going to go in depth. It feels weird doing a show about an interview that already happened. I'd rather you just go and have a listen yourself. CCP's been on a bit of a media blitz lately, and I was rather happy that this one happened to occur when it did. There were explicit questions asked about NFTs in CCP's other interviews with MMORPG, this one with CCP Berger, the creative director. Declarations of War, we had Ratati, a product director or manager. I forget what his title was again. It's product something. He's like one of the top 3 guys. And then we had Helmar, who interviewed with a Japanese outlet. And this is the one which I am not particularly familiar with. This is also the one where it seems a lot of folks are reading what is said to have been said about RMT and getting very upset about it. So if you have read the stuff from the translation of the interview with Helmar and you're concerned, I'd recommend read Berger's comments about blockchain and NFTs when he was speaking with MMORPG. Listen to the interview with Ratati and Swift. Both are very explicit about the way CCP intends to consider NFTs going forward. I'm not going to summarize them for you because I don't want to mischaracterize it, and quite frankly, everything's getting taken out of context anyway, so I'm just going to leave it there. Ash asked Fozzie about it as well. That's right. So Ash Tarathi interviewed CCP Fozzie and Swift about the Interstellar Convergence, and they discussed NFTs for a little bit during that interview too.
Yeah, NFTs are a complicated thing. I think there is potential for something to happen, but I think it has to take some time to evolve beyond the current state of how they are.
I will say, from my own personal experience, when a friend first described EVE Online to me, he described it because he didn't realize RMT was an illegal thing. He thought RMT was just a legit thing. He never did it because he wasn't good enough at the game yet. He's like, yeah, I'm going to be a miner, and I'm going to mine so good that I'm going to sell my ore for real life money and just play video games. And eventually I discovered, no, that's not a thing. But that was sort of the initial introduction to EVE, the way it was described to me by a friend. That and the markets, the intricacy of the markets, were the 2 drawing factors. So if CCP or some game could make that a thing, with the key caveat of not being problematic, would be interesting. I think the worry, and it is a legitimate worry from a lot of fans and a lot of gamers, is that NFTs could be used nefariously And it's good to see that CCP, to my mind at least, is taking that seriously. So go listen for yourself. We have plenty of different perspectives from plenty of different CCPers. I recommend you be informed before you spread your rage throughout Reddit, but who am I to say? Alright, that is it for tonight's episode of Talking in Stations. There's been a lot of fighting in and around the map. Looking at our chats in Discord, looking at our notion for the upcoming week, there have been a lot of battles and combat that Shen is going to be talking about tomorrow. So please be sure to tune in for that. Shen and Nick will be here. And then, of course, we'll be back on Saturday or Sunday, depending on how Matterall's feeling on the day. Thank you again, Gregorian, for sticking with me. Thank you to everybody who joined us in the chat. Have a good evening.